Hello everybody and welcome to another Smile tutorial. This time going to cover the basics of slopes. And I'm in the landing site for a few reasons. First off, there's a lot of slopes here in the original game. There are also some actual sloping errors in this room. So basically to start off, slopes are these green things. You can get to them on the BTS tab over here. Again, this is Smile 2.5. And you can see you've got these slopes. There's also yellow, and there is actually red slopes as well. Don't even worry about those. You only want to mess with the green things. So, basically, you've got all these different slopes here. Basically, what they are is there's a tile property of a slope. So, like this tile we're on right here. Here's slope, and then the BTS value says which slope it will be. So, if I hover over here, if you see in the top left corner of Smile by the Metroid, which actually you can't see me, just that. I can see this thing right up here. So if I hover over this, you can see a 0. That's 1, 2. So basically there's sequential. So this BTS value is going to be 0, 0. So if you try giving it 0, 8, that's right here. So it's one of these slopes. So that's basically how slopes work. They're a BTS value mixed with the slope property. And to make the ramps possible like this, make it so you don't just stop against them. So basically, what you should be seeing, also amazing quick map background here, but when the slopes are done, you'll see, obviously, Samus moving up and down the formation without stopping, being caught on a corner or anything. So if we did something a little bit different, let's give that one. So if you did it like this, because the slope isn't set up right, you get caught on this corner here. Samus won't continue walking up that. So, lesson number 1 with slopes is you always need, whenever you have a ramp of any kind, like even with this here, you need to have one of these green slope squares, is what I call them. The square slopes, I guess. You need to have one of these behind them. Basically what this is doing, you can see this little line. There's a couple lines up top. Samus' position will hit where this bottom line is on the initial slope, and it's just pushing her up the rest of the way. So that way she walks up smoothly, and that takes care of that. So every time you have any of these angle slopes, you always need one of these square slopes behind it. Otherwise, Samus will get caught on the edge. And something you'll see in this room, which isn't necessarily needed for all circumstances, but you'll see they do this double slope. It's not necessarily needed. If I were to make this a solid tile, you'll see I'll be able to go up just fine. So I'm still walking up this just fine. This tile here is no longer a slope, but because there's still this one slope here, I can walk up, but not a problem. There are situations where you do want to use 2 square slopes though, and that is if you're making a Shine Spark path. Every so often, I believe it's based on subpixels, I don't entirely know why, or the whole details into it, but every so often when you Shine Spark against a slope like this, if there's only one square, sometimes her position, because how fast she's moving, she will actually hit this and stop the Shine Spark. So if you're intending people to Shine Spark across something or anything like that, put the 2 slopes. If they're just running across with Speed Booster, you don't need to worry about it. But with the Shine Spark, you do want to put 2 slopes behind it, 2 of the square slopes behind it. So, as far as the tiling errors, or the slope errors, I guess I should say, in this room, you'll see above the doors here, they don't have a square slope back here above this door. Which means if you were to try to jump up through this thing, you would get caught on the edge. Which You know, it's kind of hard to see around the door, but if people are jumping through a door or something, they might get caught there, lose their momentum, whatever. It's really annoying. So you'll want to put the slope there. Also, I guess I should mention, I guess I can move this thing back up here. I should mention that you can also flip horizontal and vertically, and all the values, like the secondary values, will still be the same. So like this is 00, that'll be the same. But if you flip it, the value becomes 80. So just upside down, facing this direction, you add 8 in front. If you do a horizontal flip, now there's a C in front, and if you put it back down to this, now there's a 4 in front. And obviously when you get down here, it'll keep increasing, so now that's a 9 in front, there'll be a D in front, so on and so forth. So if you know the values of them, you can just type in on your keyboard the value of the slope you want. Otherwise, you can just drag and drop from the menu here and do your slopes that way. So slopes are something important. Obviously, I didn't mean to do that, whatever. If you're trying to make something look natural, not just a bunch of squares or anything like that, you're going to want to use slopes. You can do some things like, let me get this together here. I don't want you to be that. So let's say we've got this going here. Yeah, might as well do that. So now I've got this whole thing aired off. It's nice and airy in there. And with sort of like invisible passages like this, you can just basically build yourself a ramp through. And when you do this with a solid wall, I highly suggest you have the show type on map. It'll help you see your air tunnel or your solid tiles. It's just something I would recommend. You don't have to do it. And this thing here, we'll put it there. Let me see here. Okay, so there's one more right there. And then we'll just throw this in here. And see, there's no more corners that will get stuck on. In fact, that does not need to be a slope at all. So let's just make that an air tile. It's like that. So now we've got a passageway through this rock formation. We've got all our slopes set up. Setting up the slopes is very easy to do. So, but here you see, just like that. Now we've got our passage behind the rocks. And if you want to do some little trickery or whatever, you can make copy tiles and have them appear behind Samus instead of in front, so Samus will walk in front of the formation up a slope. You can see some of the tile differences there because I copied a corner tile and put them there. So you could do that with your tiles to make it look like, you know, there's actually a path, like something she's stepping on up there, or just kind of a visual hint in general. So yeah, the slopes, it's really easy to do. There's not too much to them. It's just maybe not obvious at first what exactly you're doing. Again, the basics really are, you know, put a square slope, at least one behind every of your actual angle slopes. So if we want to make this a ramp instead of having to jump up this. And you can do these on any tiles, it doesn't matter. So yeah, now we have an actual ramp. If you want there to be a ramp in the air, all you do is something like this. And you know, I'll put one there, sure. Now we've got a ramp in the air. Although, let me actually put that on there. Excuse me. And you can see a lot of times for slopes you'll be using the like 1 tile slope and the 2 tile. There is a 3 tile here. There is also a 2 and 3 tile going vertical as well. So those are all in there. We've got those slopes set up in there. So now we've got our slope path there. And again, we only need the 1 square. But if you're expecting the shine spark, do the 2 squares. And let me get rid of these guys here, just so. So we've got the slope we set up here. So you can make your invisible sort of air slopes as well. You can do stuff like that. Now there are some other properties to slopes. Let's go back into the landing site here. So the slopes push you up or down, depending on whether they're facing up or down, obviously. This can, or you can use this to do some things. I know some older hacks, especially, enjoyed doing stuff like this. Let me grab this tile here. And let me do this. So you may have heard of slope elevators. Because they push Samus up, you can do sort of make elevators out of them. So if we did that, and then let me see, we'll do this one here. We'll do this one facing down. You can do this. I'm going to show this off. I would not recommend doing this, however. And I'll try to show off why anyway. So we got that going here. We got our slope elevators. Get that garbage off the screen. So here's how they work. Push Samus along, ride elevator, and then fall down. Let's ride an elevator. So that doesn't seem so bad. However, there are issues with this. Say if I try to spin jump, you saw the graphics garble right there. If I put this closer to the wall, or there were other tiles all around, or whatever, and just by turning left and right, or spin jumping into these, Samus will move too fast for the game to load properly, and you'll get those tiling errors, or those graphical errors, I should say, not tiling errors. You'll get that to happen a lot with these slope elevators. It's more noticeable when you have like actual tiles around. It's not just the same tiles repeating, so the slope elevators, be very careful with those. It's kind of a little bit frowned upon to use them anymore. It's not saying you can't, but you know, there are issues with them that you should be aware of with those, so just be careful when doing slope elevators like that. You can also do one-way paths with them. So, for instance, let's say we need to get up to this ledge here. Let's say, you know, gravity suit's right there. Why not? We can do a little path for it. You can kind of make a little puzzle challenge. So walking over, I'm just going to fall through, and I can't jump up through this. Basically, you can kind of think of slopes as solid on one side and air on the other. Kind of like platforms in Mario that you can jump up through but not fall down through. Although, with the way the screen jerks a little bit, because it does push Samus through. Not quite the same. And here, you can see even just through this one slope, we've got the graphics error here. It'll scroll off as soon as it's off screen, but you know, it can happen even with the one. So another reason to be careful with these. But yeah, you can make it so player has to jump across this section to get their supposed gravity suit there. Otherwise, they'll just fall through. And you can do that the other way, where they can jump up through but not fall down through. So that's all fun stuff with slopes. And if you want to set up your tiles for slopes, let's say you know you always want this tile to be this slope. So basically, pull this down again so you can see. If I'm on this, you'll see the value up in the top left corner is 12. So all you do is double click the tile, put it on slope, give it a BTS of 12, get the value. Now every time you place this tile, it's going to be that corner slope. So that way it makes it easier to do, instead of what the tile normally is, which is this. Every time you place it, then you would have to go drag and drop your slope over to it, or right click, change it to slope, and put the BTS value. So it's easier just to, once you have your tile sheet and you know that's the tile sheet, or that's the place that tile is going to be, I highly recommend setting the default on it, because this is just so much easier to do like this instead of all the other ways. So that is a little something I would recommend. It might help out, might speed things up a little bit. You might also maybe set up this tile if you wanted as the square slope. Although, again, with tiles like this, you might actually use it more as a solid tile. So then you kind of have to weigh the option. Do you want it to be a solid tile, or do you want it to be a slope? So, like there, walk up that. You notice here, they don't really have solid properties to them, except when you're on the one side. So I can walk straight through these. It's not lifting me up because my vertical position is not high enough for it. As soon as you get high enough, it will catch and push you through. There was a little thing up there. So yeah, you can see, again, this is kind of why doing things like this is kind of frowned upon, because stuff like this can happen, and it scrolls off and it's fine, but it looks ugly, so that's why you gotta be careful with stuff like that. But that is the basics of slopes. You only need the one square slope after all your angle slopes. If you plan on or you think the player might shine spark across it, you might want to put 2 square slopes behind it. It's not a guarantee it will catch with just 1 square slope, but just in case, you know, so that doesn't happen, you could put 2 behind it. These other slopes here, basically this little half slope is basically the same as this big square slope. It acts the same. I can fall down through it and not jump back up, or I can turn it, or actually I think I can stand on that one and not jump back up. Let me test. I don't actually remember which way it is, so let's make sure here. Okay, so yeah, that's one you can stand on. You stand on it when it's on the bottom. You can jump up through, but you can't fall down through. And if it's the other way, you can't jump up through, but you can fall down through. With this solid outline, you see tiles like this. These are just solid on both sides. You can't fall down or jump up through them. Now there is some things to be aware of with these. If you're making a bridge, you know, let's make a tile here. Let's do, and the birds say hi, by the way. Which value is that? That's 0. Okay. Alright. Let's say, let's copy that one. Okay. we'll just use this for reference here. Wow, I did not actually do that right. I am good. There we go. Let's do this. You might look at this and think that your half slopes will work just fine for this bridge, which isn't wrong, but there are issues with the half slopes that happen sometimes with Speed Booster. We'll see if I can get it to happen. Which probably won't, because I'm trying to test it and show the thing. With this, I find a lot of times, especially if you're making a bridge or something, if the player cannot reach the bottom of this at all, I would recommend making these just regular solid tiles, not even bothering with the half slope tiles here. The reason being, for one, is you will actually save tile data because the slopes will take up a little bit extra. It's a different tile property, so if you can not have that in there, it'll save some level data. And sometimes you can actually get caught in the floor with these slopes. When you're speed boosting across the floor, sometimes randomly you'll just get stuck in the floor. I don't know why it happens, but it does sometimes. So that's another reason why I just recommend doing a regular solid tile in case of that. So that's basically it for slopes. There's also this little corner piece. If you just have like one bubble instead of all four of the thing, you can make it solid. If you have 3 of them, you've got the ability to make those 3 solid. Although sometimes it might be better to put the bubbles as ramps, so players can walk up, not just get stuck on things. But that is the basics of slopes. I guess the one final thing I want to cover with slopes is the ship, actually. The enemy has no real solid properties, it's your slopes and solid tiles. So that is what you're walking on. You're not walking on the ship, you're walking on slopes. And basically, when you put it right on there, it lines up the entrance to the enemy, I guess the sort of elevator thing, properly. So if you move the ship, just move, or if you change the graphics of the ship, just change the slopes to match your ship. Make sure you walk across it just fine, and whatever. And that's basically all there is to slopes. They're not complicated, there's just a few things to keep in mind, like with the dual slopes. If you have things like this, put the square slopes even over the doors, so that way if players jump through doors, they won't get caught in the corner and lose their momentum. That's kind of an important thing that people sometimes overlook. Now, that door cap's annoying on. And I just thought of something that left my mind. Go me. Oh, yeah. When a slope, the final thing, second final thing, when a slope is on the ground like this, it does not need a square slope underneath it. I see people do that a lot, and maybe because I see something like this with the square slope underneath. This is not needed. If this is the lowest plane the player can walk on, there's no need for slope under your angle slope. So that is not needed. If it's the lowest floor already, there's no angle slope in front of this, you don't need to put this here. This is completely useless. It will do absolutely nothing. So that is the basics on slopes, some of the things you can do with them, and some of the things to watch out for if you do stuff like this in the slope elevators. Otherwise, hopefully this will help kind of explain what you can do with slopes and how to use them.